Alcohol, the ubiquitous social lubricant that has become such an inextricable part of our culture. We love it. We love the way it sloughs off our inhibitions and brings us together in community. But for the alcoholic, just one drink serves as the great antagonist in an often terrifying story. In 1939, William Griffith Wilson, co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, wrote of alcohol, "Many pursue it into the gates of insanity or death." Wilson himself was a self-described hopeless drunk, and in 1934, he hit his bottom.
It was midsummer 1934. At a New York hospital for alcoholics, I was lying on one of those grim beds of physical and mental anguish we AAs know so well. I had met my match. Alcohol was my master.
Wilson had what he identified as a spiritual experience, one that compelled him to, as he later writes in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, turn his will and his life over to God as he understood God, and to devote his life to helping fellow alcoholics find sobriety. Nearly 80 years later, the 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous is thriving, with AA meetings spanning the globe. But how does one define thriving? AA's own analysis consistently reveals that 50% of all those who try AA leave within 90 days, and only 19% remain after 30 days. A mere 5% remain after 1 year.
The 12-step program itself, in my opinion, doesn't work for a lot of people. A lot of people are turned off by the religiosity. They're turned off by the concept of powerlessness. They're turned off by the notion that you have to give your life and your will over to the care of something else, that you somehow don't have the ability innately to do anything for yourself. And in fact, you need another person to guide you through whatever trials and problems you encounter in life. And I don't think that works for everybody.
And therein lies the rub. For 80 years, Alcoholics Anonymous, a program with its very foundation steeped in religiosity, has been offered up in virtually every national institution for decades as the truest path to sobriety. But for those secular alcoholics desperate for recovery, the hope for relief from compulsive drinking may seem out of reach.
There are lots of people, some people find this hard to believe, but they don't realize that AA is a religious or spiritual entity. They think it's secular. I grew up in Fort Worth, Texas, in an oppressive, burn-in-hell Baptist background, and that was my experience. I was always fearful of things, more fearful than your average kid, I think, was sort of watch out, something, you know, someone may get you, you know, like, I attributed that to the burn in hell sermons and those things. I took them to heart.
The fear that hounded Jim as a child pursued him into his teenage years. And at 19, he discovered alcohol.
For anybody who fools around with this, adult or minor, is playing with dynamite.
For Jim, drinking to the point of oblivion was an effort to feel normal, to feel a part of, and to shake the fire and brimstone narrative of his youth. But what began as a seeming remedy for his feelings of inferiority and anxiety became the tyrant in his life. For 15 years, Jim lost everything during those years: his job, his marriage, and himself.
what am I doing this for? This is pain. I'm living in pain and horror. I'd like to go to the other side where there is, you know, just real life pain and horror occasionally, but maybe I'd have a break on occasion.
The addiction needs to be hit head on. The addiction needs to be the focus. It needs to be the priority of the person, the day-to-day priority of the person to get better.
And so, in the language of addiction and compulsive behavior, Jim hit his bottom. And from it came the impetus for S.O.S, the secular organization for sobriety.
I really didn't set out to start anything. I gave talks at Unitarian Universalist churches, at secular humanist meetings, at atheist groups, that sort of thing. Although it wasn't just for, I thought everybody should be welcome, but these were receptive groups. And so, and one lady came forward once, is that my recollection, at a Unitarian church. She said, somebody should start something, why don't you? Other people were saying, we feel that way too. So what do we do? And so I quickly put together some stuff to start a meeting, and on a kitchen table, you know, set it out and so forth, and then other support started coming in and what have you, and these meetings started forming literally all over the world.
I really am convinced I need meetings. I feel that I have to do certain things not to revert and go back and relapse. I really believe that, and I feel that in my case, it has to do with attending a meeting and remembering what I am, and remembering what I can be.
Most recovery programs support the notion that a support group is needed, or at least recommended. I believe that it is. I think the challenge for a secular person is to find a group that fits with his or her worldview and philosophy of life. If that means attending AA meetings and just attending to keep your mouth shut, but just to be there for the fellowship, that I can understand, but it's a sort of a lonesome existence.
You know, 20% of the population are non-believers, or at least don't associate themselves with any religion. So that's a lot of people in this country. You know, that's 60 million people in the United States.
It's very hard, I think, for a lot of people, especially some alcoholics that are really suffering. I think it would just be more feasible, a better way if they could have another alternative than just have to do this one way to get sober. Just like if there was one religion on the corner and says the only religion is Christianity, or only religion is to be a Muslim, period, I would think a lot of people would, you know, cherish the idea that there could be another way. And that's the same with how you get sober.
Some people come over and they say, I can't abide AA anymore. It helped me get sober. I want to thank it for that and thank those folks, but I just can't put a square peg into a round hole, or vice versa anymore. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do mental gymnastics anymore. That's why I'm now in S.O.S. S.O.S. is open to everyone. We don't care if you're an agnostic, an atheist, a free thinker, a Christian, a Buddhist, a Jew. We don't care. Those things we see as a separate issue. That is your own personal quest.